Welcome back to Let's Cruise. Discover the world of cruising with Enjoy the View Travel. Today, we start part three. Today's topic is ocean and river cruise destinations. That's all we're discussing today. There are a lot of things to talk about. We are not going to go into depth on any one particular destination. I'm really just going to highlight them and touch on them and then move on because we're covering ocean and river cruises today in this. And so it's a really big topic. So we're going to start out with Australia and the South Pacific. Okay, so you have a couple of main areas that are covered under this region, and I am going to break everything down into regions to make it helpful. So, Australia and New Zealand are typically considered one area. You have a couple of different options on where to leave out of, and as well as places to stop. So, if you are looking to do Australia or New Zealand or a combination of the two, this is a really good option for you to be able to see multiple cities within both areas. Also, Hawaii is listed under this one. There's a lot of options for Hawaii. You can do some that leave out of California and go to Hawaii. You can do some that leave from Hawaii and cruise around all the islands. I mean, you have lots of different options. Again, taking a cruise to these destinations is a really wonderful way to be able to visit multiple places on one trip. Um, I know for me, Hawaii is definitely on my list. Being able to go to Hawaii multiple times is probably not going to be something, that's going to happen for me. So, being able to hit a lot of different places in one trip would be ideal. All right, South Pacific, Tahiti, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Bora Bora. These are all exotic destinations. And you can do them within a cruise and be able to hit more of them. Again, just like I was talking about with Hawaii and Australia and New Zealand. Um, it just allows you to see more places when you go on a cruise to there. So these are the first destinations that we are discussing. So in our next region, we're heading to South America and Antarctica. Yes, I said Antarctica. I would love to do Antarctica, but let me tell you a couple things about Antarctica. One, they're going to be on smaller ships, so you are going to have probably more movement. If you are someone who is prone to motion sickness, Antarctica is probably not going to be the easiest cruise for you. There are a lot of areas that you have to pass through. Um, One is called Drake's. Oh, I can't think of the rest of it. Drake's Passage, I think. You have to go through, and that is typically really rough water. Um, and even your most seasoned cruisers sometimes still end up getting sick passing through that. Apparently, it's really rough. It's also very cold. So, if you do not like cold weather, Antarctica is not going to be for you. But I hear amazing things about it. It's also super expensive, but it's one of those once in a lifetime kind of trips. So if it's something that you really, really want to do, it's something that we could go ahead and talk about and look at what kind of pricing it is so that maybe you start setting a goal of I'd like to do this in, so many years. And you can set aside, and save up for that trip. Because that is definitely one of those once in a lifetime trips. I've seen people who have gone on the expedition ones, which typically actually allow you to step on to Antarctica with the penguins. So it looks really cool and really amazing. So that's something to keep in mind. The Galapagos Islands, again, that is another more expensive cruise, but it's also on some smaller ships. So you have to keep those things in mind. But again, I mean, those turtles, if you are a turtle fan, that is definitely where you want to go. And then in South America, you have destinations such as Brazil and Peru, Argentina, Chile. So, I mean, you have lots of different options when it comes to South America and Antarctica. We're headed into the Asia region next. Now, I've not had the opportunity to do as much research in this area because I've just not had the request for it yet. So I haven't had the opportunity to research as much as I would need to give a lot of details on this. But I did want to touch on this as most cruise lines do offer some Asia options. So you have Japan. I do know just a minimal about Japan. I know their cherry blossom season is a very, very popular time over there. They are gorgeous. I've seen some amazing pictures. But they also have some kind of a festival type in May. And there it's extremely busy during that part. So you want to kind of keep those things in mind when you're thinking about a cruise destination. You want to think about, do they have any special holidays? Do they have any particular seasons that are going to be the most traveled? Because those will also typically be the most expensive times to go to that area. So if you are a budget traveler, you want to keep that in mind on the seasons that you want to go. You also, when you're cruising, sometimes you are limited to the seasons that are offered. Not every season is available to travel. Thailand, that picture right there is just gorgeous. And I have seen some of the most beautiful waters on pictures from Thailand. So Thailand is very intriguing to me for the ocean aspect of it for sure, and all of the cultural aspects as well. Some of the other places that you can visit in the Asia region is Hong Kong, Singapore, China, Indonesia, South Korea, and Vietnam. I have also seen a lot of pictures from Vietnam lately that are amazing as well. Some of the most beautiful waters from these areas. So these are places that you definitely want to consider and think about. All right, let's move now into some of the most traveled and most cruised ocean destinations, Mexico and the Caribbean. So let's start with Mexico. There are a lot of options when you are cruising to Mexico, and a lot of times you will see some Mexico options in with your Caribbean cruise um, as well. But don't forget about that there is not just the Gulf side to Mexico. The Pacific Ocean also goes along on the Mexico side. So you have to think about some of that. So Cabo San Lucas, that's on the Pacific side. So, I mean, you have some options over there if you want to travel on the Pacific. So, I mean, think about those. Keep those in mind. You still have your regular, typical Mexico options that people think of Cancun and Cozumel, Playa del Carmen, and so many more. So Mexico is always a great option. They have lots of amazing beaches. So that is always an option. And it usually, these destinations in Mexico and the Caribbean, usually you're going to be able to travel year round, especially on the Gulf side and the Atlantic side. I'm not real sure about the Pacific side if it is a year round, but I can check into that if that's something that you're interested in. Also, please do not forget about the Panama Canal. Take just a second and talk about that because if the Panama Canal is on your list of places that you would like to cruise, I highly suggest that you think about doing that cruise sooner rather than later. My understanding is that Panama is not taking care of the canals since they've taken over, as well as we would hope. And my fear is that in the near future, that we will probably no longer be able to travel through the Panama Canal because of the conditions of the canal. So, again, it seems like every year we're starting to see less and less cruise options through the Panama Canal. So if it is something you're interested in, I would probably think about doing it within the next couple of years. So maybe go ahead and get that on your radar. Think about pricing for that if it's something that you're going to need to save up for, or if it's something that maybe you want to push ahead of something else that you were thinking about doing. Um, just for that reason alone. And then we have the Caribbean, which is super popular, and we have people that travel the Caribbean every year, sometimes same destinations, sometimes different destinations. The Caribbean is kind of broken up into Western, Eastern, and Southern Caribbean, and it includes the Virgin Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, Antigua, Grand Cayman, Belize, and there's a couple of other ports that some of the different cruise lines also visit as well, but those typically are your most popular ones. All right, so let's head to the next region, which is Alaska, California Pacific Coast, and Canada, New England. Now, I realize that with some of that, it's not really exactly in the same region, but I was kind of finishing out some US options, and so I just thought I'd put these guys together. I mean, Alaska is Alaska. It is major cruise season, May through September. May and September are going to be your colder months. June and July are going to be your warmer months and typically a bit more expensive to travel. But Alaska is just amazing, and it is definitely one of those bucket list cruises. Alaska offers a lot of land tour options as well. So you want to think about that. I know they have some train options with some of the cruise lines. And I mean, you just have the opportunity to see so much of Alaska when you are able to do those cruise tours or land tours as well. So think about those. California Pacific Coast, let's touch on that for just a bit. If you're wanting to come out and do the West Coast, you can cruise all the way from California to Vancouver in there and cover a lot of ground. So the California Pacific Coast is a really great option. And also, if you're one of those that typically you hit the Caribbean every year and you just want to do something different, head out and check out the West Coast and see what that's like. Sail in the Pacific, see what that is like, and experience that. And then you also have Canada and New England. I would say Canada and New England is kind of like Alaska in that it has a shorter cruise season. So you want to kind of keep that in mind. A lot of fall cruising for Canada and New England because that is very popular with seeing, the colors changing on the trees, for all those typical fall things. So keep Canada and New England in mind. There are a lot of historical excursions on the New England side. In visiting DC and Boston. And so you have a lot of history things there. If you have some history buffs in your family, you can experience a lot of great excursions on those cruises and see a lot of Canada as well. So those are some great options for you to keep in mind that you might want to do that are still here within the US or in Canada.